I'd like to call this meeting to order. We can start out with roll call. Director Eto.
Hiroshi Eto, Director, District 5.
Claire Wilson, Director, District 2.
Jeffrey McAnalloy.
Liz Drake, Director, District 3.
Tammy Campbell, Superintendent.
And now if you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. And at this time, I entertain a motion to accept the approval of the agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the meeting agenda of June 28, 2016 as submitted.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda of June 28, 2016 as submitted.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, Dr. Campbell, new administrative staff, please.
We're excited to share some more new administrators who are joining our ranks, and what's really exciting is to see so many of our own internal candidates moving up through the pipeline onto these positions, as well as acquiring some of the best talent from other districts. We call that stealing, and we're really excited to introduce our new folks. I'm going to have our Chief of Communications, Cassie Swinson, do the honors and just tell you a little bit about these incredibly talented leaders who will be working in our schools for the 16-17 school year.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the board, and Superintendent Campbell. It is my pleasure to introduce new principal leadership to Federal Way Public Schools beginning in the 2016-17 school year. I am pleased to share the appointment of the interim principal of Mark Twain Elementary. Shane Baguyo will serve as interim principal of Mark Twain Elementary in 2016-17 school year. He is currently the Executive Director of Special Services and Intervention in the Ording School District, in which he oversees special education, Title I, LAP, ELL, Health Services, McKinney-Vento, and Early Learning. Previously, he has served as an Assistant Director for Inclusive Education and was Assistant Principal at Neely O'Brien Elementary School in the Kent School District. His experiences include leading professional learning communities and multi-tiered systems of supports to improve core instruction and intervention practices. In his previous school leadership experiences, he has led PLC work to improve core practices by aligning curriculum to standards, analyzing standard-based assessments, and improving instruction. In his current role, he has championed MTSS as one of the district initiatives. Mr. Baguyo has also received accolades for best practices in prevention responsive services from the Washington State Association for School Psychologists, Emerging Filipino Leaders Award in Education from the Filipino Community of Seattle, and the Cuyo Award from Community Service from Omega Phi Omega, Incorporated. He received his Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, a Master of Arts in Education School Counseling, and an Educational Specialist degree in School Psychology from Seattle University, and his principal certification from University of Washington Educational Leadership Danforth Program. Please join me in congratulating Sean Baguyo.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloy, members of the school board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I am deeply honored and thrilled to be serving as the new interim elementary principal at Mark Twain. I am ready to join the school team to implement our powerful district vision to ensure that high quality teaching and learning occurs for all of our students. I know that together we will build a school culture where each student has a voice, a dream, and a bright future ahead of them. I feel so very blessed to be here. Thank you so much, everyone.
I am pleased to share the appointment of the planning principal of Sahalee Middle School. Joe Costi will serve as planning principal of Sahalee Middle School in the 2016-17 school year, assisting and preparing for the transition of Sahalee Middle School to becoming Taft Academy at Sahalee for the 2017-18 school year. Mr. Costi has made a significant difference as assistant principal at Nautilus K-8. Prior to his administrator role, he served in the Kent School District as a principal intern and dean of students at Glenridge Elementary School, taught grades 5 and 6, and was a title lap interventionist for a total of 3 years. An achievement he excelled at this year was working with Nautilus K-8 team to develop a vision, mission, and implementation plan for Nautilus's shift to becoming a science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics STEAM lighthouse site. Also, during his tenure at Nautilus K-8, he helped to implement Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports, PBIS, school-wide. Using his background and experience, he worked with the Nautilus K-8 team to refine the professional learning community, progress, and strengthen the guided reading practices. Additionally, he played a role in engaging staff in data analysis and data-driven dialogue to improve student learning. In Kent School District, he was chair and facilitator of the school improvement team at Glenridge Elementary. He led the PBIS committee, co-led tiered intervention and professional learning focused on tier 2 and 3 behaviors, data analysis, and professional learning community work. At both sites, he played a critical role in increasing family engagement with over 450 family members attending after-school events focused on math and literacy. He received a Bachelor's of Art degree in Elementary Education K-8 from Washington State University and received his Master's in Educational Administration degree from Grand Canyon University and his principal certification. Please join me in congratulating Joe Costi, Planning Principal of Sahalee Middle School for the 2016-17 school year.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloway, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. I simply want to extend my thanks and the honor to have this opportunity and my excitement to meet the students and community of Sahalee. I'm looking forward to working with our scholars and helping to create an environment that is engaging, rigorous, and rewarding for all of our students at Sahalee. I can't wait to come back right here and celebrate all the hard work that's going on and continue to celebrate our progress towards inviting Taft to our site. Thank you.
I am pleased to share the appointment of the interim principal of Decatur High School. Christina Spencer will serve as interim principal of Decatur High School for the 2016-17 school year. Ms. Spencer has served as assistant principal and academic advisor at Decatur High School since 2013. Prior to her administrator role, she served as an algebra geometry teacher, AVID teacher, and a DREAM Project school-based and high school and beyond coordinator. During her tenure at Decatur High School, she developed and coordinated a multi-tiered and focused system of support for transitions for 9th grade into high school, focusing on instruction, positive behavior supports, and the ideal that every student scholar deserves a champion. She also developed and coordinated math vertical teaming with our middle school feeder pattern with support from middle school and high school instructional coaches. Furthermore, she implemented a young men's and women's mentoring program with community volunteers focused on empowering young men and women to lead and take ownership so they can meet their goals for high school and beyond. Building relationships and honoring student voice are essential to her work. She shared that her core beliefs lie in the ideals of charity and a South African philosophy of humanism known as Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. She received a Bachelor's of Art degree in math education from Tuskegee University and received her master's degree and principal credentials from Seattle University. Please join me in congratulating Christina Spencer.
Good evening, Board President McAnalloway, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Campbell. It is an honor to stand here today as the interim principal of Decatur High School and to have the awesome opportunity to lead, serve, and collaborate with the key stakeholders of the Decatur community to meet the goals of our strategic plan. In the coming year, I look forward to supporting our learning community as we focus on holistic scholar achievement through equity, practicing compassion, and improving our core instruction. It is imperative that all Gator scholars get what they need to find success in high school and beyond. Thank you.
All right, next is our good news announcements.
Thank you, new administrators. We're excited about having you on board.
Alrighty, it's time here for us to start with some good news. So I get to start right off. And with us this evening are representatives of the Todd Beamer High School and Federal Way High School Air Force Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, or Air Force AFJ ROTC. It's a mouthful. So I'm going to ask you to come forward when I read your name so we can celebrate you. And first off, I'd like to invite the AFJ ROTC instructors from each school up. And then I'll ask the students to come up and join them. So from Todd Beamer, if Major Barry Jones and Senior Master Sergeant Wayne Lott are here. And from Federal Way High School, Major J.J. Golombowski and Master Sergeant Will Smith. If you could join us. So, from Todd Beamer High School, we have the 2015-16 unit commanding officers. First, I'd like to call up Francine Akfala and Chase Carvolo. From Federal Way High School, we have the incoming 16-17 unit commanding officers, Michelle DeMoss and Isang Maydesil. Are they here? Come on up. This year, both schools' units were recipients of the Distinguished Unit Award. This award recognizes the personal growth and accomplishments of the cadets, contributions of the instructors as mentors, and the support of the school and local community. In addition, the Todd Beamer unit has received the Air Force JROTC Silver Star Community Service with Excellence Award. This award recognizes the top 5% of all 892 AFJ ROTC units based on community service, which is a large part of the mission. This year, Beamer's cadets contributed nearly 3,000 service hours to their community and their school. Thank you for that service, students. We're very proud of you and wish you the best in your future endeavors. Thank you to the instructors as well for your hard work in making these programs such a success. Todd Beamer and Federal Way, Air Force Air Force JROTC. Let's give them a hand. Thank you. I have a hard time. Awesome. Next up, 2 teams of Taft Academy 8th grade student scholars were selected as statewide finalists last month in the 2016 Technology Alliance Youth Apps Challenge, earning them the opportunity to present their apps at a ceremony on June 4th. Would the following students come forward, please? Megan Montiel, Kevin Vo, Aaron Ho, Hope Sushel, Lydia Solomon, Najama Egal, and is Sam Rice here, Teacher Sam Rice? No. You guys are representing the Taft group. They made up just 2 of 15 middle and high school teams from across the state to be selected to share their apps with an audience of tech and computer science professionals at the University of Washington Seattle campus on June 4th. Congratulations, scholars, on this impressive accomplishment. Let's give them a round of applause. All right.
Now, next up, for 14 years, Seattle's Fifth Avenue Theater has honored outstanding achievement in high school musical theater. This year, this included both Thomas Jefferson and Decatur High Schools. Could the following students come forward as I read your names? Esther Elzinger, Kat Elliott, Matthew Bosley, Caitlin Perkins, Marissa Thompson. Matthew. Good job. And will teacher Laird Thornton and community member Brian Sushak please come up if you are in the audience? Please join us. Well done. Well done. From Decatur High School, Jeremy Varkey and Chase Olm, do come up. And will teacher Toby Dykus and wife Kristen Dykus, if you're in the audience, please do join us. And I'm very excited because I actually got to come and appreciate, the Addams family was amazing. The Fifth Avenue High School Theatre Awards program was created to shine a spotlight on musical theatre in schools. This year, evaluators attended 104 productions, including Thomas and Jefferson High School's All Shook Up and Decatur High School's The Addams Family. These students, parents, and staff members were nominated in multiple categories. Congratulations to Decatur High School English and drama teacher, Toby Dykus, and Thomas Jefferson High School music and drama teacher, Laird Thornton, on their successes. This was, by the way, Mr. Thornton's 25th musical theatre production with Thomas Jefferson High School. Congratulations to our young thespians, and thank you, adults, for your inspired support of them. Well done.
So proud of you. So proud, absolutely. Thank you.
And now, since 1998, which is a long time ago, the News Tribune has embarked on an annual search for some of the best and brightest among local high school graduates. Each year, they narrow a field of 100 nominees to just a dozen who are dubbed the News Tribune All-Star Graduates. This year, Thomas Jefferson's Ruhama Berta, whom I'm afraid is not in the audience, is one of them. Ruhama, could you please come forward? She spent time in her younger years searching for purpose and found it at Thomas Jefferson High School, where she earned the Heart of a Raider Award. She grew into a leader and a scholar, earning a spot in the National Honor Society, serving as senior class senator and co-chairing the Halloween food drive, We Scare Hunger. Ruhama plans to enroll at the University of Washington's Seattle campus and is interested in studying public policy and political science. Congratulations and good luck, Ruhama. We are very proud of you. Yes.
And then finally, we want to recognize the students who organized the wonderful Fed Factor event, a district-wide talent competition and benefit show that took place at Todd Beamer High School on June the 8th. Could the following students please come forward? Jonathan Nguyen, Cici Caetano, Anastasia Costin, Andrea Deep, Tyler Lum, and Julie Heng. Come on up. Jonathan and Cici, who are both Todd Beamer students, took the lead in organizing the Fed Factor. As musicians, they wanted to spotlight the many talented students in Federal Way schools and to support causes they feel strongly about. Jonathan and Cici reached out to other schools, resulting in representation from all comprehensive high schools in our district. The event raised $1,800 in admission at the door. However, a total of $6,000 will be going to various charity organizations because more than half of the original $5,000 donated by our great regional corporate partner, Wild Waves, was able to be used to pay for the event that was left over. $5,000, that's great. So thank you all for the wonderfully entertaining event that is making a difference in the lives of others. Congratulations.
I just want to say this event was one of the best. I already have my seat reserved for next year. I want to thank Susan Honda. Susan really brought this group to me to make sure we had district sponsorship. So Susan, thank you for your support of this particular event. It was off the charts. Incredible. Thank you.
Nice.
And now we'll have our legislative update from Director Drake.
Just a brief update I wanted to share both with the Board of Directors and our community the fact that a proposal that we submitted to the WASDA Legislative Committee, a proposal called levy rollbacks. I received a letter this week that actually says that our proposal stands a chance of becoming a standing legislative proposal, which means that the concern that we have about the levy cliff and the financial hardship that we're going to be experiencing should the state not further the support over the next 2 years, it's going forward as written. And I'd like to read what we submitted, what the proposal said. WASDA shall initiate and or support legislation which would ensure that no school district loses levy authority if the district's apportionment/budgets are decreased by the state. Districts should be held harmless for at least a 2-year period. Now, it's not the answer to everything, but it's another piece that will add strength as we move forward once legislation takes place in November. So I'm very pleased and thank the board for the support in, asking for me to issue this proposal, and it's nice to see that things work. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Our next item agenda is the board self-assessment. So if you can all look at that, we actually went through a board self-assessment this year and put a rubric together that evaluated how the board did in 4 different board goal areas. Goal 1 was policy governance and quality improvement, along with board professional development. Goal 2 was linkages to our community and stakeholders. Goal 3 was around strategic plan support, and Goal 4 was superintendent support. So we've done an evaluation. This will be posted on the website, and at this time I'd entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education's 2015-2016 self-assessment is approved as compiled.
A motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
The only thing I was going to say is we had a conversation today a little bit about putting words in there, and on this copy we have right now, it doesn't have the proficient, the distinguished words. Right, so I just want to, would say that the motion moves forward, but if we could do that with the adapted or the revised scaling, that would be the only conversation I would have, so.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next is public comment. We have one comment at this point. There are blue sheets on the back table if you were open to comment. And at this time, Gary Robertson.
Good evening, Board President McAnally, board members, and our great superintendent, Dr. Campbell. My name is Gary Robertson, and tonight I'd briefly like to speak about a subject you're well aware of, and that's our teacher crisis. Although I wasn't able to identify the exact teacher shortage in our state, it is significant. I'd like to put the problem into perspective. First, teachers have been leaving or transferring at a rate that is unprecedented for the past decade. Second, from 2012 to 2016, there's been an increase of over 500% in emergency substitute teachers because of another shortage in regular substitute teachers to fill the vacant positions. And third, 20% or 1 in 5 school leaders in the Puget Sound region reported being in a crisis mode finding teachers. The worst was Central Washington, where it was 34% or 1 in 3. In the Yakima Herald, it was reported that our one school district had to hire education personnel from as far away as the Philippines due to the shortage. When teachers are available to hire, school districts get in a bidding war, paying for moving expenses, lodging, food, and medical, as well as higher salaries and benefits. It's the old law of supply and demand. When the demand is up and the supply is low, the price goes up. Recently, I had the privilege and opportunity to meet with Superintendent Campbell and her assistant, Sally McLean, and this is very important. And their number one concern, and rightly so, was teacher compensation. As Dr. Campbell has mentioned before, teachers in the Auburn School District can earn more than $10,000 more than the ones in our district, and that gap needs to be closed. The issue will have to be addressed in 2017 when the teachers' union contract comes up for renegotiation. As I've said before, in 2017, the legislature is finally supposed to address the McCleary decision and the levy swap. When they do that, the significant teacher shortage and the teacher compensation will have to be addressed. What they do and how they do it will go a long way toward finding out if these problems are effectively addressed. Finally, I'd like to say, Dr. Campbell, Sally McLean, and I all agree. Right now, there are more questions than answers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gary. All right, next is superintendent comments. Dr. Campbell?
I have 3 big ideas that I want to share with you tonight. One is I want to thank the staff across all of our schools, and I want to thank our central office team for the successful conclusion of a school year. Our students learned a lot this year. We inspired them. We went through a rigorous process to strategic plan, and our staff were willing to say, you know what, we can step it up. We know that we can get better. Our data tells us that we can get better. And I couldn't be prouder to be a part of a team that I have both at the central office and across schools. So for the teachers and support staff and building principals, thank you. I hope you get lots of rest over the next few weeks. You deserve it. And for our scholars, read. Don't disengage fully from learning. We don't want that summer slide to happen. I want to also share that we've got some staff who are around this summer because we have summer STEM camps taking place all across the district. We know that by the time a student is 10 years old or 11 years old, they make a decision whether or not they can see themselves in those STEM jobs. And so we have STEM camps that are taking place so that we can continue to increase scholars' perception about those STEM-related fields, to increase their understanding of application of those STEM standards, because we know when you do the experiences, the standards become alive for you. So if you get an opportunity to stop by one of the schools to see what our scholars are experiencing, please do. I know I'll be doing that. And then thirdly, I want to give you a sneak peek into something that I'm going to be starting for the 16-17 school year. I will be having a monthly drawing where families will put their names in the hat, and if their names are drawn, they will experience a book and a game of chess with the superintendent. I will come to their homes. I did this when I was a principal, and it's a way, again, to encourage literacy, but also to answer questions about education, and anyone who's selected will get a free chessboard, because I'm a rabid, I was going to say avid, but rabid chess player. It's been a while. So get your game on if your name is drawn. So more to come in the fall.
Great, thank you. All right, now it's school board comments. Director Drake, would you like to start us?
That's something I learned tonight. I had no idea. It's always good to be learning. So I'd like to share just two events that I've been very proud to be part of. The Strategic Plan Summit was the day after school finished. It was an electric event with so much energy, so much professionalism, so many teachers, staff, administrators really getting their teeth into what the strategic plan is going to involve. And perhaps for me, the most powerful piece of the day was in the afternoon when each school had a room. We held the summit in Todd Beamer High School. Each school then went to a different classroom. On the board, up on the wall, was data specifically relevant to each school, and members of the faculty, the staff, the administration started diving into what does the strategic plan mean to you in the light of the data that you've got. It was so powerful. There was not one sign of fatigue after a long year, and everyone commented on how valuable it was to get this start at the end of the school year instead of doing it in August. It was really tremendous. So that was a real upbeat event. And then the other one, recently, President McAnally and myself, we met with some councillors, city councillors, and we just talked about some specific areas that we can collaborate. I've been talking several times now in board meetings about the importance of us working together collaboratively. And it was really exciting to have an ad hoc, very informal conversation with no agenda other than the success of every one of our scholars. That was the basis. And we will continue these conversations. And I'm not sure at the moment what action will come from it, but just a meeting of minds with one focus was very fabulous. So,
Thank you. Director Wilson?
I too enjoyed the time at the summit, and I think the thing I'll point out is the ongoing professional development with Glenn Singleton's group around our work on racial equity and continuing to think about that. So as we look at data, it's not just about the data, but it's also with a lens of equity and the lens of what we know about institutional privilege and all those kinds of things, how we unpack our data maybe in a little bit of a different way, and how we look at it to help us inform our practice. And it's about our practice and how we approach children, not about the children, which is, I think, another kind of a mindset or a mind shift. The other thing I wanted to say is on June 18th, I had an opportunity to attend the Washington Youth Academy class of 2016 graduation over in Bremerton, and I had a very personal reason to go there. But I realized there were many, many of our students, not only from Federal Way, from school districts across our area, who go there. And it's a part of the National Guard Youth Challenge program. And on that particular date, there were 138 graduates. And of those graduates, they had an 89% graduation rate. And many, if not all of those students are on a credit retention pathway. So for their 120 days there, had an average of at least 8 credits being retrieved during that time. And the whole purpose is to improve their educational levels and their employment potential. And the youth that go there are either youth that have dropped out and are really struggling and having some issues and oftentimes are in trouble or on their way to being in greater trouble. Or they're children who are currently in school but at risk of dropping out. And it was an incredibly moving graduation ceremony, and I think we talk about our traditional high schools and then we think about our career academies and those smaller schools and how important that is, and for many of them what a milestone that graduation is for them and their families. And the same could be said for an entire room full of families and extended family at the Kitsap County Fairgrounds that was literally packed to the gills with people celebrating these 138 young men and women. And so I'm going to give a shout out to Gavin Bishop personally, but also a shout out to every other one of those young people that really persevered. And one of the major generals said that if anyone has ever been through boot camp, they went through it and they succeeded. So I mean, are coming back totally different young men and women from the inside out. So it was really a wonderful day for me to be able to go. And I guess the other thing I'll just share is last night I had a chance to attend the City of Kent and the Latino Hispanic community, and the City of Kent are engaging in conversations with different communities in Kent and within Kent, and last night was the Latino Hispanic community conversation. And since in my particular area of the school district, 5 of the schools are in Kent, it's an interesting conundrum because although we're Federal Way School District students, their address is Kent. And so oftentimes there may or may not be things, either from a district perspective or from a city perspective, that may or may not be communicated because we're in a situation with so many municipalities. And it occurred to me the same kinds of things coming up, from language to communication to access to resources and supports, and even more a reason that we need to be thinking geographically about how we leverage resources and supports for our families, because many of them are connected and live in other communities. And really had some good conversation with Councilmember Fincher and Mayor Cook about, again, just from even a community perspective, when we're in a district that covers so many different municipalities, how we assure that we have communication and interactions that are serving all of our families. So it was a great conversation, and I will continue to take part in them.
Great, thank you. Director Eto?
So it's so exciting to see all the community engagement that's been brought up through the strategic plan, and seeing all the initiatives starting to play out so that we can improve our graduation rates and improve the number of our scholars that are on grade level from pre-kindergarten on up to high school. So we got to meet today the new principal that's coming in to establish the Technology Access Foundation Academy there at Sahali, and put a focus on science, technology, engineering, and math, and project-based learning. All these great positive things. And so it's really discouraging, and we've heard it over and over again from Gary Robertson, who's been to the podium here often, to talk about how without legislative action, there's going to be a big hole blown in our budget, and it's going to happen unless the legislature takes action on their, contempt of court ruling from Supreme Court. They don't work for the Supreme Court, clearly. They work for the voters, and so I hope the voters are out there in force, making sure that the legislators understand that it's totally unacceptable to lose that sort of money, and that they need to do their fundamental duty to fund basic education. It's just aggravating to see we're on the cusp of great improvement and seeing that we have the potential of having it all fall apart. So I hope that we have an energized community that makes it clear to the legislative reps and those folks in Olympia that they got to do their job, because there's great things happening in Federal Way, and I'd like to see them play out.
Great, thank you, Director Eto.
Can I add a real quick piece to that? I just want to add that I met with the governor on Friday with 2 or 3 other superintendents in the region by invitation, and I want to thank Sally because she really helped me to frame up some great talking points. And I stressed that point over and over again, Director Eto, that we have to act now. And I talked about the importance of really dealing with salaries and compensation, because that will help with the shortage. And what was really clear, I left our priorities with the governor, and it was exciting to also see the superintendent of Everett there and the superintendent of Kent, and we were all saying the exact same things. So just to add to that as well.
So I too attended the summit, and to watch 380 staff from Federal Way get excited about the strategic plan, it was definitely a great day, and the energy was very high. I also spent 16 hours over a 2-day period down in Lacey, beginning to look at the Ledge Committee work and the legislative priorities. We actually received 34 and went through that process. I can tell you that the 4 that Federal Way was signed on, all of those were accepted. There were small changes made just in verbiage to the ones for Tukwila, and I've actually talked to Dave Larson, who submitted those, and he approves of those changes. We just actually fortified them and actually added P12 to one of them instead of only being a K-12 kind of situation. But I can tell you that what we heard out of the legislative in the presentation, and I've shared this with Dr. Campbell already, is that they truly believe it's going to become a political issue with the levy cliff, and that even though they have committed that they'll do something by April 1st or no longer than April 30th, it's probably going to be the first week in June, at the earliest probably May 29th before we see anything out of that, because they're going to use it as a political wedge. based on how either the House and Senate end up, on which side of the aisle it is, and so that is kind of what they're saying they're preparing for. So even though we've done a levy rollback, and that'll be part of what those standing priorities are, I think reality is that they're going to push us all the way until we're hanging on by our fingernails from that cliff in the end of May and early June next year. So that's all I have to share at this point. And so at this point, we will actually recess into official public hearing for the 2016-17 budget. Dr. Campbell?
I would like to invite Sally McLean, Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations, up to present an overview of the budget recommendations. I want to thank Sally for the number of hours that I know that she and Jerry Carlson have put into this product today. She's incredible at what she does, and so Sally, I just want to thank you for all the time and effort that I know that has gone into this presentation and really giving us a robust budget that will allow us to accomplish our goals. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. Good evening, President McAnalloy, members of the board. It is my pleasure this evening to bring to you our third and final presentation related to the 2016-17 superintendent's recommendation. I will try to focus on things that have changed since the last time you saw these materials 2 weeks ago, so that we have time for public comment and any additional comments that the board or may have. I just have to say that it's unusual for me to not be the doom and gloom, so I really appreciate you guys laying that framework as we move forward. Certainly right now we can celebrate the second year of the biennium and know that we also need to be prepared for the next biennium. So our presentation purpose and goals this evening are obviously to conduct the public hearing that is required by law. I'll be recapping the 2016-17 budget highlights, making sure that you're aware of our major budget assumptions, touching briefly on how the budget, the general fund budget in particular, is beginning to align around the pillars of the strategic plan. We'll spend time recapping revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. We'll look at the other four funds because in addition to the general fund, which is where we spend the bulk of our time and conversation and the bulk of our money, you also have a duty to adopt a budget for the Associated Student Body Fund, debt service, capital projects, and transportation vehicle fund. And then I will remind you that part of the budget adoption includes the preliminary 2017 voter-approved tax collections. I want to reemphasize voter-approved tax collections, and that there is always an opportunity in the fall to make adjustments to those if there is legal reasons to do that. And then you'll finally have the opportunity to actually adopt the resolution that will allow us to move forward with our 16-17 budget. In addition to the PowerPoint tonight, what you have in front of you is what I call the abbreviated state budget document, the Form F-195. It has summary pages in it for you that are the most relevant for the general fund. And then for each of the small funds, you will have the formal budget documents along with, right under the color page, what I would call the user-friendly budget document for those four funds, just for your future reference. So again, appreciate the board's deep involvement and the superintendent's involvement in the current legislative landscape for K-12 funding. 2016-17 is the second year of the biennium, so there was little overall change. We know the 1.8% COLA was passed through for all K-12 staff, and the most significant change that's driving the preponderance of the funding into Federal Way is to reduce class sizes for K-3. Just as a reminder, unless you actually achieve the targeted K-3 class sizes, which on average moves to 18.25 students per classroom next year, if you can't achieve that target number, you don't get the funding. So you've heard people talk about the teacher shortfall. You also are aware that we have some space challenges, but at the moment the budget is assuming that we will continue to do that great work to get the very best teachers in here to help move that class size down to the 18.25. One of the other pieces that occurred in this last legislative session that I want to share with you, you saw this at the work study, but a new piece of the budget that the state adopted requires the disclosure of the estimated basic education MSOC, materials, supplies, and operating costs, compared to our revenues. What we looked at in April was our 2015-16 state allocation and expenditures. So here you can see that for 16-17, we have a budgeted state allocation of $25.8 million, and we have budgeted expenditures of $31.2 million in basic ed for just what I often refer to as the things, because remember, most of our budget is spent on people. So our local levy subsidizes $5.4 million of our materials that are needed to provide basic education, which is why that levy cliff is so perilous. Part of the reason. Just again, wanting to continually update for you our enrollment, because enrollment is the major driver of revenue in the general fund. We have our average annual numbers now through the month of June. Remember, we collect student enrollment data every single month, September through June, and the funding is based on the results of that average. We are continuing to predict an overall enrollment growth of about 1.5% from this year, and are prepared to support those students with the expansion of and authorization of additional classroom teachers and other supports. The other major assumption that is woven now through the general fund budget is our need to address these critical major maintenance areas that we've talked about. The independent consultant reviews of roofs, boilers, and our PE and athletic fields have compiled quite an extensive cost for us, looking at least $18.3 million to address those needs in the next 1 to 5 years. Given the nature of this work, which typically occurs outside of the school year, the borrowing will be done incrementally and in alignment with project planning. So there's no sense in us borrowing more money than we can spend in a very short window of time, because there's no sense in incurring additional interest costs beyond the projects that we can actually implement. So the current budget is built on an assumption that we will issue $7 million of limited general obligation bonds. Those are often referred to as LGOs. This is non-voted debt. Obviously, if we're selling bonds, we're generating revenue and expenditures, so you have to provide capacity on both sides of that ledger sheet for the revenue and the expenditures. The preliminary projects, based on their need, includes $3.9 million for roofs, roughly $4 million for PE and athletic fields, and $1 million for boilers. So just as a reminder that there is no additional cost embedded in the budget for the principal and interest payment. The expectation is the principal and interest payments will come from within that current resource. Strategic planning. Obviously, you've all had an opportunity to be involved in the strategic planning process for 2016-17 and beyond. Many of you reflected on that amazing energy that occurred in the summit. Again, as we move forward with the development of our budgets, we are really trying to think about the underlying pillars: standards aligned, culturally responsive teaching and learning; Pillar 2, safe climate and strong relationships with families and community; Pillar 3, effective, caring, culturally competent teachers, leaders, and staff; and 4, data-informed continuous improvement. So again, as we prepared for next year in context of the 5 goals, there are some very strategic investments and realignment of existing resources around those 5 goals. Goal 1, around the 4 pillars in support of the 5 goals. So Pillar 1, we talked about teaching for learning. The board at a prior board meeting approved $5.2 million for a guaranteed and viable K-8 English language arts curriculum adoption. Of that $5.2 million, $2 million is the superintendent's recommendation for an ongoing commitment to the renewal of our curriculum resources. We have $600,000 that has been reallocated into the Office of Equity, Engagement, Family, and Student Success. It will be very powerful to take all of the various leaders within the superintendent's team who work with pieces of equity, engagement, family, and student success and have them woven together to help serve our community. Obviously, investing in people, this is where we spend most of our money, but we are making some very strategic investments by ensuring that each of our schools has dedicated school counselors, that we are moving towards a model in our elementary schools where there is a principal and an assistant principal, and that we are supporting the expansion of the restorative practices that have been modeled this year at 3 of our middle schools, so that work can be done at all of our middle levels. And then obviously managing the whole, $1.5 million investment in department alignment, technology and assessment support, and some preliminary alignment in response to our safety and security review. So that's about the end of the pretty pictures now for a few slides. Diving into some of the numbers, right? So you've seen this slide before. This was the slide you saw on June 14th. You know our adopted budget for 2015-16 had $271.5 million in revenue. 2 weeks ago, while we were still working on balancing budget, before federal changes and before the addition of the $7 million borrowing, we were looking at revenue of 289.5. So let me walk you from the 289.5 to the budget that you have in front of you. So what you're going to see on these slides will show both the revenue and the expenditure changes that have occurred since June 14th. So here you will see the anticipated revenues from the limited general obligation bond in the amount of $7 million. Again, just a reminder, to actually do that requires future board action. As we continue to sort and sift the various funding formulas for state categorical funds, enrollment increases are continuing to drive some increases in our state categorical funds, an additional $1.4 million than previously presented. And remember, that is also prescribed funding, or what we sometimes refer to as strings attached. So it's great to get that new money, but it comes in and it goes right back out. Which is also the same with federal funding. Very little overall federal increases, so collectively when you think about our big buckets of federal funding, Title I, federal special education, Head Start, we have about $500,000 overall. And then the one piece that did come through the final balancing is an increase in fees to other districts. So oftentimes we serve students from other districts on a contractual basis. This predominantly happens with some of our students with special needs who come to us because we have the services to deliver. So we are serving more students from other districts, and we also had a need to adjust the fee that we were charging. So that was a $200,000 adjustment, bringing the 2016-17 revenue adoption in the general fund to $298.6 million. Expenditures, this is where we were 2 weeks ago, looking at our various investments in alignment with the strategic plan. We were looking at a budget of $292.3 million, which has, again, the same new costs on this side of the ledger. Same $7 million for the limited general obligation bonds to focus on roof spoilers and PE and athletic fields. That money, that prescribed money for both state and federal, 1.4 and 0.5. And the one change that is different here has to do with our career and technical education indirects. As a state, we are allowed to charge CTE 15%. But as we work through balancing this budget, that indirect was actually reduced to about 10.5%. So that means there's a $500,000 increase in the overall CTE budget. So the expenditures that you will be adopting in the resolution tonight are $301.7 million. In addition, there is an accounting mechanism that would transfer $200,000 to the debt service. That would be the interest payment for the LGO, bringing the total impact to the general fund to $301.9 million. So here you are with fund balance, again, with the updated final revenue budget at 298.6. You'll recall we were talking about utilizing $2.8 million in ending unassigned fund balance. That has, with the shift in the CTE, with the lowering of the CTE indirect costs, that amount has grown to 3.3 million. However, that only represents in total about 1% of the total budget. If you think about a $300 million budget, 3.3 million is 1% of that, and it does not jeopardize our overall financial health. Our fund balance continues to remain strong, and you can see some of those summary documents at the very beginning of your yellow document. So with those revenues, planned expenditures, and the use of fund balance, we will be asking you to adopt a $301.7 million budget with $200,000 for a transfer.
Sally, in the, yeah.
There was an article about us being $18 million in the mayor.
Oh, my.
I think someone looked at what we were talking about in terms of expenditures.
Okay.
It was an article, and I just think it's really important to remind our community that our budget is healthy and we're in a really good place to be able to do some strategic things.
Yeah, that $18 million is actually what we're projecting for our total ending fund balance. So not a whole, but a potential safety, a potential safety net for Levy Cliff.
So I just thought I'd say it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Someone read that and wasn't sure.
Sure. Okay.
In the slide earlier, you mentioned LGO. What's LGO?
A limited general obligation
Okay,
bonds.
thank you.
Yes, thank you. So that concludes the general fund presentation, and I know we spent a lot of time on other funds last time, so I'm going to move through these fairly quickly, except for highlighting a couple of changes, okay? So the other funds, ASB, you remember is student-generated revenue supporting extracurricular activities. Nothing has changed since this was presented to you on June 14th. Your resolution includes an appropriation of $3,475,000. Transportation Vehicle Fund, this revenue comes through the state. Again, in the Transportation Vehicle Fund, there are no changes from what was previously presented with a budgeted expenditure or appropriation of $1,054,200. In debt service, we do have one small change, and that is to include $267,000 on both the revenue and the expenditure side for a transfer from capital projects. So when you, in our state, in accordance with the accounting guidelines that are promulgated, when you have long-term debt, and remember we did the long-term financing for the cash flow for Federal Way High School, when you have long-term debt, you have to transfer that money out of the fund that has the money into debt service. So that is the only change in debt service. Capital projects, we did, because of these accounting changes related to the long-term debt, this budget was revamped to reflect the most recent guidance from Puget Sound ESD to ensure that we were properly budgeting and accounting for that long-term debt. Nothing else has changed in this fund except for the proper accounting of that earlier long-term financing. So really the only thing that has changed in here, we continue to balance this fund down to zero, and with the various changes that were done for that long-term funding, it allowed the contingency to be about $7.7 million. Remember, the odd thing about capital projects is that you have to budget for a fiscal year, but capital projects typically span more than 1 year. And so for me and for us, what you see in your monthly financial statements, you have a project to life budget. So you can see what was budgeted for the project and what we have spent over multiple financial fiscal years. So preliminary tax collections, we have actually 4 voter-approved levies. We have the Educational Programs and Operations levy at $53 million in your budget packet tonight. There are 2 levies within capital projects. There is the $10 million capital levy for Federal Way High School and security in our playgrounds. And then there is the renewal of the $4.4 million for the 6-year tech levy. And then the debt service fund levy of $17.6 million are the previously sold bonds that voters have authorized that have allowed us to build buildings in the past. So I always talk about that. It's comparable to your home mortgage. You pay principal and interest payments for a period of about 20 years before you have those paid off. So your next steps this evening are to accept the public comment, close the public hearing, make a motion to adopt the resolution if it complies with your expectations, and allow me to express my deep gratitude for Dr. Campbell's leadership and the development of this particular budget, for her input from her cabinet, and for the team that works in business services. I have to give a shout out to the Executive Director, Jerry Carlson, to our grants and budget analyst, Gloria Shank, and to the Executive Assistant, Natasha Reese, for helping me be prepared this evening. So I will step away from the podium at this point.
So is there any public comment concerning the hearing? Gary?
Yes.
Go ahead and come to the dais.
Gary Robertson. I heard a rumor, and I hate rumors, especially when I don't know if they're true or false. But I just wanted a point of clarification regarding the budget. Dr. Campbell, I believe, planned to hire a teacher at each of the elementary schools for the grades K through 3. I think it was called, what, ELA program?
K-3, what do we call them, support? Literacy support?
Yeah. Okay, is the plan still to hire all those teachers?
As we get staff who can actually do the work. And so right now, we're doing that at the schools, and we're prioritizing by need, but we also have shortages, and so we're still looking right now, but that's the plan. But that funding is coming through the state.
Yeah.
And so it's a flow through, but it'll allow us to serve more students in terms of their early learning. So I think right now, we might have hired 6 or 7 of them, and that's a number that I haven't verified, and we'll continue to look over the summer to get more of them at all of our elementary schools.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, public comments? Any board questions? Not, we'll convene the regular board meeting. So at this point, I'll read the resolution. So a resolution of the Federal Way Public School District Number 210 Board of Education fixing and adopting the 2016-17 budget. Whereas WAC 392-123-054 requires that the Board of Directors of every school district meet for the purpose of fixing and adopting the budget of the district for the ensuing fiscal year. Whereas a public notice was publicized announcing that the June 28, 2016, the Board of Directors of Federal Way Public Schools, number 210, King County, Washington, would meet in public meeting for the purpose of fixing and adopting the 2016-17 fiscal budget of the district. Therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of Federal Way Public Schools, King County, Washington, has determined that the final appropriation level of expenditures for each fund in 2016-17 will be as follows. The general fund will be $301,700,000. The Associated Student Body Fund will be $3,475,000. The Debt Service Fund will be $19,210,200. Capital Projects Fund will be $41,903,000. Transportation Vehicle Fund will be $1,054,200. Approved by the Board of Directors of Federal Way Public Schools, number 210, King County, Washington, in a regular meeting thereof held on the 28th of June, 2016. At this time, I would entertain a motion.
I second the motion.
No, I entertain a motion. I didn't make it.
I so move.
Can we read it, please? Can you read it in
Yeah,
whole?
I can.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No problem.
I move that the Board of Education adopt Resolution 2016-13 to approve the 2016-17 budget for Federal Way Public Schools.
The motion, do I hear a second?
I second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to just express my appreciation for the work that Sally and her team did, along with Dr. Campbell, when you're talking about $200,000 in a $300 million budget. That's truly decimal dust. And I recollect I had a boss who would pitch his budget by saying, we have sharpened our pencil, we have swept every corner for decimal dust, and we are proposing a budget to run on the ragged edge of audacity. And I think that's what you have done. And he never had a budget disapproved, and I think you shouldn't either. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just want to thank Sally. It's been an incredible year partnering with you, and I look forward to many more.
All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Sally, and your team. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, our next item is executive limitations, financial and asset protection monitoring report. Dr. Campbell?
You'll hear me continue to talk about systems and systems that ensure that we have rigorous processes to ensure that we're using our resources well. And on that note, I'm going to invite Sally McLean up to present to you our monitoring report for Executive Limitations 3, Financial and Asset Protection. This report is not comprehensive, but it does identify those high leverage strategies that we're doing to ensure that we're in compliance.
Thank you for this opportunity this evening, and I have to also give a shout out to our team, Dr. Danny Pfeiffer, and to Cassie Swenson, who helped me with the format and some of the presentation that you will see as we launch into the executive limitation around financial and asset limitation. Again, this is a very high-level summary of the work. Our purpose and goal is to target those specific rationale and high leverage activities that support EL3 and provide some evidence of our current practices. There are actually 5 components of the Executive Limitation 3. I realize my picture on the right only shows 4, so that's not great alliteration, but EL3A talks about financial and budget planning, which I know we just spent a lot of time talking about the 16-17 budget. EL3B is budget execution, which is really accounting for the plan. EL3C is ensuring our overall financial health and condition. EL3D specifically is asset protection, which is focused on risk management and maintaining our public records. EL3E is real property and facilities protection. So obviously, this work is built around the board's ends and executive limitations, feed into our mission, our core beliefs, our pillars, and our tagline, each scholar, a voice, a dream, a bright future. It's so nice to see that behind you. I will not read these to you because I know they have been part of your fabric now and our fabric. Each scholar, a voice, a dream, a bright future. Again, as we continue to work with these executive limitations to ensure that our goals, our measures of progress, and our signature strategies are protected through this particular EL, supporting our, our goal 1, the early years, building the foundation, goal 2, the whole child, which is a district-wide goal, goal 3, looking for our active learners, engaged, empowered, and critical thinkers, goal 4, looking for that mastery of all subjects, and goal 5, persistence to graduation and beyond. So in these slides, the rationale for the particular component of this executive limitation is on the left-hand side, and our evidence or our current practice is on the right-hand side. So when we look at best practices in financial and budget planning, there are lots of rules or guidelines that guide our work at the state level. Our budgets are prepared in accordance with the Administrative Budgeting and Financial Reporting Handbook, and obviously the primary purpose of that is to continue to ensure our financial soundness, barring any unforeseen legislative action. Our current practice, annual budgets are prepared for all 5 funds as required by state law, using conservative estimates. I didn't really highlight that tonight, but when we talk about conservative estimates, we try to make sure revenues are forecasted reasonably and that expenditures are fully accounted for. In EL3B, budget execution, or which is really the after the fact, so you build the plan, you build the budget, and then you account for it. You will have noticed that there are monthly financial statements on the consent agenda, and then our annual financial statements are all prepared in accordance with the school district accounting manual. Annually, those financial records are audited by the state auditor's office, and no exceptions were noted in the 2014-15 reports, which were just issued on May 16th. Our financial condition specifically monitors our ending fund balances and borrowing. Our current practices for the 2014-15 financial reports and also the 2015-16 and the recently adopted 2016-17 budget all indicate compliance with the Administrative Policy 6024. Administrative Policy 6024 is the one that requires that we have between 3 and 5% of our fund balance committed to a reserve. And we continue to be in compliance with that administrative policy. Long-term borrowing can only be authorized by the school board, and I would just remind you during this last year for which this executive limitation was prepared, we did a construction cash flow borrowing, which we knew would be part of this project, which was authorized by Board Resolution 2015-17. Moving to EL3D, asset protection. This really monitors risk management, public records, internal controls, cash management, and public image. I would just call out a couple of things that the district participates annually in a targeted risk assessment review. We are part of an insurance pool through the Washington Schools Risk Management Pool, and they take all the districts in the pool and focus on a particular area every year. Last year, Human Resources was the risk assessment review where we scored 100%. For this year and next year, it's actually a 2-year review, and I'm looking forward to working closely with our Security and Safety Director, Paul Vang, as we go through that risk assessment process. Cash management and internal controls are audited annually by the State Auditor's Office, and we manage our public records in a very timely manner. I would just give a big shout out to our public image, because part of our public image is the new logo. So I had nothing to do with that, but I get to shout out about it. I mean, other than voting, right? EL3E is about real property and facilities protection. Obviously, we manage our real property and we want to manage the health of the property. There are a number of things that we do that I would present as evidence. We do the annual asset preservation program, which is a review of the various systems of a building running from the foundation to the roof. That work is conducted by Cindy Wendland and her crew, along with periodically independent consultants. Periodically, we do what is called a full study and survey of all buildings, which was something that just happened in this last year. We have also conducted extensive expert reviews of those building components that we've talked about, the roofs, the boilers, and the PE and athletic fields. And then we have an active launch plan for a facilities committee that we are ready to engage in at the end of this summer. So that concludes my executive limitation report, and I am here to answer any questions if you have them.
Directors, any questions? Hearing,
I'd like to say how much I appreciate how you pull it together with the strategic plan. It makes it so coherent.
Well,
Very nice.
Again, give great shout out thanks to my fellow team for giving me that framework.
Good.
Yep.
yeah, that's great. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve that EL3, financial and asset protection, is in compliance.
The motion, do I hear a second?
I will second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is that it is the board's responsibility on a yearly basis to evaluate the superintendent, and we have gone through that process over the last month. And at this time, I would entertain a motion.
We're coming on a year. It feels like it's been much longer than that, or maybe much shorter than that, but it certainly feels like we've gotten a lot accomplished, and many thanks to Dr. Campbell for the work that she's done in her very short period of time here. And with that, I'd like to move to modify Dr. Campbell's contract as follows. A 1.8% COLA adjustment, a 2.2% merit increase, and an increase in her supplemental days from 10 to 15.
So I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I just want to thank you, Dr. Campbell, for all that you have done, from your entry plan, your theory, the strategic plan, your 100-day. I mean, it's amazing how much has been accomplished in this one-year process, and how we're moving forward to really align things. The profound shifts that are happening are just truly going to begin to reflect in our student scholar achievement in the next 3 to 5 years. So thank you.
Thank you for the teamwork. It couldn't be done without the teamwork, and so I just want to thank you for your support. Yep, more good things to come.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we are adjourned.